Welcome everybody. This is a webinar from DocuSign on the native iOS SDK, including a demonstration and a live question and answer with our mobile experts. A couple of housekeeping items. The first is that this webinar is being recorded, and in about a week you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the recording. Everybody who's attending has been placed in listen-only mode. So when you have questions, please submit them through the question and answer panel or the button that's at the lower part of your screen. We are going to have time for all your questions, or most all your questions, depending on timing, at the end of the session. We're here for you, so please feel free to ask questions during the webinar, and then we'll, as I say, get to them at the end of the webinar. You're invited also to ask a question on any DocuSign related subject, not just mobile. If you have questions on other aspects of DocuSign, we'll do our best to help you out. We're putting out a poll right now. If you could take a moment to answer this poll, that would be very helpful so that we can better understand how we can plan and improve webinars in the future. So let's go on to the next screen here. My name is Larry Kluger. I'm the Senior Developer Evangelist for DocuSign. And I'm joined today by two of our experts on mobile, Thomas Dang and Ricky Leong. Ricky is the product manager for many parts of our mobile services, and Thomas is a senior engineering manager. So between them, they can handle any of your questions and have real expertise to share with us. So now let me just turn it right over to Ricky to give the presentation, and then we're going to have a demo as well.
All right, good morning, folks. So my name is Ricky. I'm a product manager here at DocuSign. And so what I wanted to do today is really walk you through the agenda. And so the very first part of this presentation, I'm going to go over some of the evaluations, some of the considerations for including our SDK into your app. And so I'm going to go through maybe some things that you should consider and look through as you make that determination. And then next, Thomas, our development director, is actually going to go through a live code example and demonstrate what that SDK looks like potentially within your app. And we're going to follow it off with questions and answers. So today, just to set the tone, there's a lot of tools that are offered by DocuSign, and so pretty big breadth of products that we offer. But we're really going to talk about the eSignature component today, which you can get access through the eSignature REST API. And so if you have an app, you can directly access this API, and you can create your own data models, and you can go through and really start integrating right away. But if you require a little bit more assistance, or if you want some scaffolding from DocuSign, you could use one of our SDKs, which will wrap the APIs and make it a little easier to integrate. But today we're going to talk about something pretty unique here, which is the iOS SDK. And this is a way for you to get access to the APIs, but also to leverage some of the mobile components that we use in our mobile app. And so if you have a mobile application, you can leverage some of these components and get access to the agreement technology that we have. And I just want to very quickly show you the place to get this documentation and to get the information on the SDK. There's a website that has all the information available, so you can definitely download the SDK and also look through some of the documentation as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So is the SDK right for your business? And I think there's a lot of considerations when you evaluate this. And one thing you should really know, if you're really on the fence about it, or you're really thinking through whether you want to integrate another SDK, is to know that, in terms of mobile technology, we've been working with Apple pretty closely. So we are part of their Apple Mobility Partner Program, which means we work with them on development and we work with them on innovation. And we've been selected to be a part of this program. And we are actually recognized as a leader in the eSignature space. And the reason why we are recognized this way is because we have a very successful app in the marketplace. Which has 4.9 star ratings and has over 100K reviews. This means that you can leverage some of this technology and you can incorporate that into your own personal app. So that's one of the first considerations, which is we work very heavily with Apple, and we're very close in terms of them recognizing us as a leader in the space. So when looking at the SDK, really you should look at it from the end user point of view and also a developer point of view. So end user, you might have users on your site that are either in-house employees or you're looking to create a consumer app, but regardless, you're gonna really want that quality experience for them. So like I mentioned, you're able to leverage some of the same world-class components that we use in our mobile app. And that will just lead to you being able to gather signatures and agreements in seconds. And so really a nice streamlined experience, because we do that day in, day out in our mobile app. And you're able to streamline these workflows. So if you have some sort of repeatable workflow where you want to gather agreements on a regular basis, you can put the SDK into your app. And I think if you look at all the different ways to integrate with DocuSign, whether it be app flipping or APIs, this is the most streamlined way to do it. Meaning you are able to embed the components within your workflow, and you're able to prevent a lot of friction that can potentially be put in way if you're trying to get a signature or to finish off a workflow. And what that means is it prevents a better branding opportunity for you. So you're able to keep people within your app, you're able to keep them there for a longer time. So if you're a smaller app developer, it really makes you look bigger than you are because you're able to take care of more use cases. And if you're a larger developer, you're showing just kind of the spectrum of use cases that you can take care of within your own app. So that's why you would want to look at the SDK from an end user point of view. And obviously, if you're a developer, you're going to want to look at it from your own personal point of view, which is, hey, this is probably the fastest way to get integrated with DocuSign. You can prototype within hours. You could actually get a working app into the store within weeks, as opposed to potentially going months with the regular APIs. And so it's really fast integration. I think it's important to note that if you are able to integrate quickly, it could increase the probability of success for your project. And that also means less development costs. So it's a very big consideration when integrating this SDK. The second big consideration is it's secure and reliable. So it's the same tried and true technology we use in our mobile app. We have nightly scans of our mobile app to make sure that it's secure, that it's reliable, and even on the back end we have 4 nines of reliability and availability. So you could rest assured that if you use the SDK, it will be there to serve you. And finally, the thing to consider is that it's free to use. So there's no additional costs. If you have your DocuSign account or you have users with DocuSign accounts, you can put this SDK in and get started right away. It's available on GitHub without any additional costs. So if you are generally looking to use SDK, here's an overview of the features that are available. And I'll just kind of walk through from beginning to end. The very first thing you're going to want to do if you have this SDK included in your app is you're going to want to authenticate. And so we support multiple ways to authenticate. You can use any sort of token-based or OAuth based way to authenticate, or you can have a shared service account. Secondly, once you're authenticated, you can get access to your account. And so you can start caching envelopes and templates for usage. So if you have prepared agreements already that you want to download and get signatures on, you can do that. If you want to download a template and potentially use that over and over again within your app, you can do that as well. You can pre-fill templates. So if you have your own customer database, or if you have your own forms that you're setting up within your mobile app, you can have your customers fill those out, and then you can pre-populate a template with the mobile app. Next, you can compose. And so we actually provide some UI for you to create an envelope on the fly. And so you can use that as well if you want to prepare envelopes that way, and that's more ad hoc. You could fill templates, obviously, as part of a signing ceremony. So you can go in and manually fill out fields and take a PDF and and just provide all the necessary data. You could apply your signature. And so we provide a way for you to capture a signature, and we provide a signature palette. We are also well suited for connectivity issues that you may potentially have. So if you are looking to get in-person signatures, or if you are looking to replace paper contracts for a signing ceremony, you're going to want this SDK to include, because it's going to be able to deal with all kinds of connectivity, whether it's good or bad. You're online, offline. If you need to get a signature and you can't run the risk of not being able to complete a transaction, or you don't want to run the risk of having to go back and ask for a signature again, this is well suited for your needs. And finally, you can customize the look and feel of the actual SDK so that it feels more native within your host app. So this is just a broad overview of the things that are available. So one of the things that the SDK is well suited for, and as you make your evaluation, is for in-person signing sessions. And so if you have in-person signing, this goes hand in hand with the connectivity use case that we are able to deal with. There are many examples of this that are using our SDK right now. And so whether it be field services, construction, retail apps, they all have a need to collect signatures in person. And so for field services, they're really looking to finalize sales contracts. For construction, as they finish a job, they need to sign off work orders, and that's something that uniquely has to happen in person. For retail apps, if you have a kiosk or registration app within your place of business, you're going to want to use the SDK to collect that signature. And for transportation, if you're delivering goods and you want confirmation, that's something, again, is a very in-person use case. Financial services for branch sign up. Insurance is actually a use case we're going to go through in a little bit and show you an example of that. So for loss assessments, that has to happen in person. Real estate for property appraisals, and healthcare for liability forms. So you can see that these are a lot of use cases that require a signature, and you're there on, in person, and you potentially have connectivity needs. So you may or may not want to rely on the internet at that point. So you can use the SDK to get offline signatures. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Thomas, and he's going to actually demonstrate some of these principles and things that I've talked about. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Thomas share.
All right. Thank you very much, Ricky. So let me actually dive into a demo of one of our SDK sample apps to show you what it might look like if you have your own native iOS app and you integrate our DocuSign SDK into it. So here's a company called Allure Insurance, which provides an app to its insurance agents to, if there's maybe, say, a car accident that one of their customers have, the insurance agents can go out to the customer, use this app to collect information about maybe the nature of the accident, as well as get information from the customer and have the people involved sign off on kind of the insurance right up here. So what does this look like from the user's perspective? So first of all, let's actually go ahead and sign into our app here. And behind the scenes, what it's actually doing is it's actually authenticating with our DocuSign iOS SDK as well. That's to prepare it for the next few steps where we actually do make API calls to our DocuSign backend. So now that I'm logged in, let's say that as an insurance agent, one of my customers got into a car accident somewhere out in the wilderness where maybe there's not quite a good internet connection. One thing I want to do is, before I actually go visit that customer, I know that I need to get the kind of auto insurance claim written up. While I am still on a good connection, I can actually go to my list of automobile accident templates. And here behind the scenes, we are actually making a call to our DocuSign SDK to actually retrieve a list of templates that have been configured, that we've configured on the DocuSign backend. And now here's where actually, so again, since maybe we're kind of preparing to go out into the wilderness where there's not quite a good connection, one of the features that our DocuSign SDK does provide is the ability to cache templates on the mobile device itself. So here I've got my list of templates. Our app does provide, or this app does provide the option to cache one templates. So let's go ahead and tap one of the buttons there on the right-hand side. And internally, behind the scenes, that's calling a DocuSign SDK method to actually retrieve that template and cache it on the device there. So now that I do have this template cached, let's kind of simulate me going into an area where there's not quite a good network connection. And to do that, I'm gonna turn my device into airplane mode. And you might notice in the top right or top left-hand corner, it does show the Wi-Fi symbol, but I think that's just kind of a little quirk here with my QuickTime here. But you can see with, here that I'm actually in airplane mode. And I can assure you that there's actually no connection at this time. So now that I've actually gone offline, let's say that I actually go out to my customer now at the site of the accident, and I want to collect some information about the accident itself. So go ahead and tap on my template here that I cached earlier. Now maybe I collect some information about the customer, such as their name, address, maybe some information such as email as well as their phone number, for example. This is all still within the Lure Insurance app itself. Go ahead and tap next here. Now collect a few more pieces of information, such as kind of the nature of the accident, maybe do some kind of estimate around maybe the cost of the accident itself as well. So at this point, again, want to say that we're still here in the Lure Insurance app. We've kind of collected all the information. Now, once I actually tap next here, the top right-hand corner, here's where we're actually invoking our DocuSign SDK method to go into the signing experience. And here's, from what we're seeing here, is actually where the SDK takes over from a UI perspective. So our SDK does provide all the UI to actually go through the entire signing experience for a document, similar to what you might find in our DocuSign iOS app in the Apple App Store. But from the Allure Insurance user's perspective, this all looks like one single cohesive app. It's not like we're jumping between apps to collect information versus do the signing experience. It's really all one experience from the user's perspective. So here we're actually ready to begin signing. Right? So this is the template that we downloaded earlier, had a document that was kind of behind the scenes there as part of that template. And you can see that some of the information that we collected earlier is actually pre-populated here. And that's using a feature that our DocuSign SDK provides, which is some template tab defaulting. So your app is able to programmatically pass in some values if you choose to actually default it into the signing experience here. So we have, for example, the customer's name, maybe the amount of damage here as well. And that's all here for the user. And so we can see here on the bottom left-hand corner, we do have, let's say that we now need to get signature from the customer that got involved in the accident. Could just hand this device over to the customer. They can go ahead and sign right there. Let's say Tom, for example. Adopt. And so now that we've gotten the signature, if all the information looks good, let's say that we're ready to finish off the experience here, signing experience, top right-hand corner. Do finish, confirm signing. And there we have it. The signing experience has been completed, and we've dismissed the signing UI, and now we're actually back in the Lure Insurance app screen where we kind of see the list of envelopes that have been signed. So kind of, again, to reiterate there, from the user's perspective, that whole experience of going from the template list to collecting information into the signing experience and back to this screen here where we see the list of signed envelopes, from the user's perspective, is really kind of just one app experience. But the UI that you saw somewhere in the middle around when we actually went into the signing experience, going through the signing process, that was all provided by our DocuSign native iOS SDK. So to kind of finish off the example here, now let's say that, so again, we did go through offline signing with this envelope. We haven't actually synced this envelope back up to the server yet. But let's say that we did go to a point where we do have internet connection now. So go ahead and turn off my airplane mode to get connection here. So the last step here in the process is to actually sync sync this envelope back up to our DocuSign servers. So the Learn Insurance app does provide that functionality here, where you can tap on the unsynced envelope there. And behind the scenes, that's calling one of our DocuSign SDK methods that says, hey, please sync all the offline sign envelopes at this point. And there we have it. That's kind of a demo of the end-to-end process of what it might look like from a user's perspective when we have our DocuSign SDK that's integrated into your own native iOS app. Now, let me actually switch over back to the presentation here. And now that we've kind of seen that demo of what it might look like from a user's perspective, let's actually go a little deeper here to kind of go over from a code perspective what was actually happening there behind the scenes. So just to recap what we saw during the demo, what were kind of the main steps there. First, we went through the authentication. And so here behind the scenes, we're authenticating through the SDK to our DocuSign API. And that is to prepare it for the next few steps where we do interact with the DocuSign API. From there, we went through the SDK to fetch a list of DocuSign templates. And since we were in a kind of scenario where we did need to do offline signing, we did use the SDK as well to cache a template on the device itself. From there, we went offline on the device to kind of essentially, if we perhaps might not be in place with the best connection, that's where we might be in an offline situation. And while offline, we were able to still go through the process to, of course, collect information from the customer, pre-populate that into the template itself, and then, of course, go through the signing process with the customer. Right. Now, once we've completed the signing process offline, let's say that we go online back maybe to a place where we do have a Wi-Fi connection or a cellular connection. From there, the last step in the process was to actually sync that signed envelope back up to our servers. And again, that was using a method that we provide with our DocuSign SDK. All right, so again, code perspective, let's kind of break that down further here. So first screen, we saw, as we kind of go through the next few slides here, you'll see on the right-hand side, the screen that we saw during the demo. And then on the left-hand side of the slide here, you will see from a code perspective what was happening there behind the scenes. So first up, authentication. This is where the user logged into the Learn Insurance app. Behind the scenes, we do have to go through call a couple of methods to actually authenticate with our DocuSign iOS SDK. So first of all, we do provide kind of a few different configurations or defaults from our iOS SDK. So an example of that would be the kind of default API timeouts. So by default, when we make API calls from the SDK, we have a default timeout of 30 seconds, for example. If that's something that you'd like to change on your end, maybe prefer 60 seconds for timeouts, that's an example of kind of a configuration setting that we do allow you to change as part of the setup process. But if you're okay with all of our defaults, we do, of course, provide kind of a default configuration method here. And once you have your configurations there, you can call our setup method to initialize the initial setup process with our SDK. And that is using our DSM manager class here. Now from there, you'll want to actually kind of go through a login method to authenticate here with our APIs. And that DSM manager login method does take a couple different parameters here, namely access token, which an access token is something that your app would have to go through one of our DocuSign OAuth authentication services to actually retrieve. And we do provide a few different options there in terms of OAuth flow. Mainly for native apps, we do recommend either the implicit grant option, or if you have a server-side setup in place, you could use a JW grant option as well. And more information around kind of our authentication flow is available through our DocuSign developer site. But once you do have an access token, that's certainly one thing that you'll need to pass into this DSM manager login method. And then we'll also need a couple of pieces of information about that particular user that's logging in as well, such as their account ID, their username, email, etc. So at this point, once we've successfully logged in, over the next few steps, we are now able to call some additional SDK methods that might interface with our DocuSign API. So next step, when we went through the demo, was to actually retrieve a list of DocuSign templates from the server. So how do we do that? Our SDK does provide a method, which is on our DSM templates manager class, which is list templates. And what this method does, it provides you the list of templates that are configured on the account that we logged in with during the previous step. So we do not provide the UI for that, but we do provide essentially the data to your app, and you can choose to use that data to render kind of a table view similar to maybe what's here in the Learn Insurance app itself. But this is really kind of the starting point here where we get the list of templates. Once we had the list of templates in our example during the demo, as we knew ahead of time that we were going to go out to a place where maybe there wasn't a connection and we had to do offline signing, we can actually cache that template beforehand. And so that's where you can use our DSM manager, a template manager method called cache template. And this method would just take in a template ID as parameter. And once you call this method, our SDK will go out to the server, to a DocuSign server, get that template information, and cache it locally on the device itself. Right. Now from there, in the Learn Insurance app, we did go offline in here, but as part of the Learn Insurance app, we did also go through a screen here where we're kind of collecting some information from the customer, such as their name, email, to kind of prepare the signing process. Now, I did mention briefly earlier that our SDK does provide some methods to do some defaulting of tabs on the template for the signing experience, as well as we do offer the ability to maybe default some recipient information on the envelope itself. So in terms of envelope defaults, what we provide there, so we provide an object here called DSM envelope defaults. And if you would like to default some template tabs with some values so that they're kind of prepared as the user goes into the signing experience, you can pass in kind of like a dictionary which with key value pairs into this DSM envelope defaults object. And so the keys here in the dictionary would be, should be matching up to the tab IDs that you've configured on the template beforehand. And then the values are kind of like the text values that you want to default in the signing experience here. And once you have that dictionary of key value pairs with envelope tab defaults, you can go ahead and set that dictionary on the tab value defaults property of our envelope defaults object. Another kind of approach to, or another option that we allow for defaulting is on the envelope recipient side. So for example, if your template has maybe 1 or 2 signers, for example, that you want to actually programmatically default their names and emails, we do provide that as well. So that would be through our DSM recipient default object, which does provide a name and email property that you can set programmatically. And that as well, that recipient default object can also be set on the kind of parent envelope defaults object that we set up previously. And once you have all those defaults set up, if you do choose to use any sort of defaulting there, and you're ready to actually go through the signing experience with that template, you can go ahead and call our DSM templates manager method here called present send template controller with template. And you can see it takes a couple of different parameters here, namely certainly the template ID. This would be the template that you want to actually go into the signing experience with. Optionally, if you do want to use defaults, we can pass in the defaults here in the arguments as well. Then a couple other parameters here, such as perhaps if you can indicate whether you want to actually go through the signing experience in an offline mode, or if you do have a connection, you could choose to go in an online mode as well. And calling this method would invoke what you see here on the right-hand side, which is our the UI that we provide from our iOS SDK. We provide this UI for actually going through the entire signing experience. So it's not it's not something that your app has to manage, but it's something that our SDK does provide. Now from there, if again, it's kind of in our demo, we were in an offline signing experience. Now that we've actually, let's say that we've collected the signature and we're ready to actually synchronize this signed envelope back up to our servers. This is a method that you can call, which is on our DSM envelopes manager class, which is sync envelopes. And that would take all the offline signed envelopes that have been stored on the device at that time, and they'll sync all those back up to the server. Now, I should point out here that it is the responsibility of your app, your iOS app, to actually make a decision on when to call this sync method. You could say, hey, maybe provide a button for the user to tap to actually do the syncing, like maybe we did as part of the Learn Insurance app. The user could, make a decision to say, hey, now that I'm on an area where I do have connection, I can tap this button, and behind the scenes, we'd call this sync envelopes method. Or maybe you could insert a little more intelligence into the app as well. For example, maybe your app could kind of dynamically detect when the user gets to a point of a good connection and then automatically call this sync method as well. So a couple of different options there. All right, so that kind of is a walkthrough of kind of a key flow that you might have using our DocuSign iOS SDK, and kind of from a code perspective what that might look like. Now I do want to cover a few points here around a little more around of what our SDK supports, and kind of a little around the kind of integration aspect or kind of initial setup around it. So in terms of integrating this SDK into your own iOS development, kind of your iOS development environment, we do support dependency management framework called CocoaPods. Maybe that's something you do use to integrate with other third-party libraries, but that's something we support here using our native DocuSign native iOS SDK as well. And if you do use CocoaPods, you can simply add the snippet here, which is pod DocuSign, into your pod file. And once you call the method to kind of retrieve all the dependencies, that'll pull in the DocuSign iOS SDK into your project. Alternatively, if you don't use CocoaPods, we do offer through our GitHub, you can download our SDK framework itself and manually integrate that into your project as well. In terms of iOS platform support, currently our SDK does support iOS 9 and above. And in terms of form factors for iOS devices, we do support both iPhones and as well as iPads, particularly for these screens that you saw during the signing experience. That can be done on both an iPhone as well as an iPad. In terms of documentation, developer documentation, we do provide a couple different pieces there. I think briefly Ricky showed earlier was our DocuSign native iOS SDK development portal. So through there, you will have some information around kind of like code snippets as well as kind of initial startup guides there. And we do provide kind of more detailed header documentation, which shows you all the different classes and methods that are available through our SDK. And then we also provide some sample apps as well through our GitHub, where you can kind of see what that might look like when you might have your own iOS app that integrates with our SDK. Now here are a couple kind of handy links for you. In terms of developer setup, before you actually kind of maybe start playing around with our SDK, one thing you'll certainly want to do is create your own developer sandbox account. And that can be done through our DocuSign developer portal, which is developers.docusign.com. And there'll be instructions there to do your initial developer sandbox setup. And accounts that are set up through this portal here for developers, it does provide, those accounts would be set up with both offline signing as well as access to our templates features, which is what you saw during the demo earlier as well. Now on the right-hand column there, in terms of kind of our iOS SDK specific resources, the first one there is the one that Ricky showed earlier, which is kind of our main portal for our iOS SDK, which will provide you kind of a link, further links into kind of our more detailed documentation. And then on our GitHub for our native iOS SDK, that's where you can find our sample apps, as well as release notes for all our past releases. And also if you do need some support from our developer support, specifically for the iOS SDK, you can file support tickets or issues through our GitHub itself as well. All right, and that's kind of what we had in terms of our presentation, but we do have some time, of course, kind of want to move over to our question and answer section, and we'll be taking questions from the audience here.
Very good. Thank you very much, Thomas. And also thank you, Ricky, for your presentations. For everybody who's on the call today, all of our participants and attendees, please take this time to ask any questions that you would like either Ricky or Thomas to answer. And so you can do that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you should feel free to ask questions about developing with DocuSign in general, in addition to mobile specific questions, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. On the screen, Thomas is showing several different sets of resources are available to you as a developer working with DocuSign. On the left-hand side, our primary resource for developers who have questions while they're developing an application is our Stack Overflow channel. Just go to Stack Overflow, and when you ask your question, be sure to use the tag DocuSign API, all one word. We also have, of course, lots of support information available on the Support Center. And if you have a support contract, then they can provide additional information too. DocuSign University has free courses for you about the API. There's a whole set of courses. We have regularly scheduled webinars that usually they are more generic uses of the DocuSign APIs. This one is a special webinar on iOS SDK. Our other webinars are typically, we call them API office hours, and we include there a demonstration of one of our different SDKs in one of our 6 main languages, along with a discussion of how the API works, and then we also cover your questions. The next API office hours will be in April, and we will be announcing it on the developer sandbox, that's demo.docusign.net, so you can see it there. We also have a series of videos specifically for developers, and that's via our YouTube channel for developers, which is named DocuSign for Developers. So people are asking questions. I see one question has come in, which is that this webinar is labeled as the iOS webinar. What about Android? Thomas and Ricky, what's the word on that?
Yeah, we actually have a Android SDK as well, so we're aiming for parity between the 2 platforms. So right now that's in a private distribution for select clients, but we are open to working with new developers and testing out our functionality there. It will be available for public release around the end of Q2. So, but if you have use cases that we can support right now, as we go through our internal alpha phase of the SDK, we would be happy to work with these customers as well.
Great. Other questions that are coming in? Ricky and Thomas, do you want to take them?
Yep. So I do see one question that's around in terms of what native iOS languages that we support for the iOS SDK. So, so certainly both, if your own native iOS app is either Objective-C or Swift, we do support both. You can integrate our iOS SDK into your app for both of those languages. And I do want to kind of maybe give an example here of maybe our sample apps. So actually in our, so this is actually this is the main portal that Ricky showed earlier for our native iOS SDK. From there, you can actually access our GitHub from the download link here in the top right-hand corner. And this is where you'll actually find our sample apps, which we do have actually both an Objective-C sample app here, as well as a Swift sample app. So certainly you can take a look through that, see how that those both integrated with our SDK. Right.
Other questions that are coming in? Ricky or Thomas, I'm not sure which of you wants to take the next ones.
Let's take a look here.
So I do see a question about deployment, and there are developers that are pretty much down the path of integrating the SDK, and it seems like they're having maybe some hiccups and actually getting it to production. So Thomas, I don't know if you want to talk about maybe best practices there.
In terms of the deployment aspect of it?
Right. So off the top of my head, I think there are various settings that we should double check before we go to production. Obviously, they're going from a demo environment to a production environment. You want to make sure that if you are using offline, some of your offline settings are turned on. And also the accounts, if you're using a production account, what we've seen is in the past, there are users that are associated with multiple accounts, and the SDK will choose a default account, will choose the default account. So you have to make sure to double check your account setups. And so if it's attached to multiple accounts and it's using the wrong account in production, you might have to kind of clean your user association before you go live.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if all else fails, and kind of what I touched on earlier in terms of getting more support around our iOS SDK, this can be done through the GitHub here. And so what we can do here is go to the Issues tab under the iOS SDK. And here you can open up issues, which our development team will be taking a look through these. All right, let's see, what else here? So there was a question here around kind of the authentication approaches for getting an access token when we first log into the SDK, which I showed earlier. So I do want to also point out kind of handy guide that we have through our DocuSign developer portal here. Let's go ahead and grab that. So here's our kind of our root page here for our developer portal. You can go ahead and under the Get Started link here on kind of the left-hand side, there's a couple different guides here. One of them is actually the authentication guide, which has a handy kind of decision tree for, since we do offer a few different OAuth authentication models, there's kind of a decision tree on which one you'd like to go with. Now, if this is for a native iOS app, for example, typically that would be either an implicit grant option here or the JWT grant if you do have the server-side setup for it. But certainly going through the the guides here would provide you kind of the steps that you would need to get an access token, which then you can pass on to our iOS SDK.
Great. We have time for a couple more questions. One question is, you commented earlier that the access to the offline templates and offline plus resynchronization capability is included in the developer sandbox system. How does that work once you go to production in terms of availability of those features?
Right. So offline specifically is something that's on one of our paid plans. So depending on if that's something that you and your customers or your company needs in your app, that's something that you can upgrade as part of the DocuSign plan to get that feature on it.
Okay, great. Do you see any other questions coming in there, Ricky or Thomas? No? Okay, so this is the last opportunity for people, for attendees to ask a question. And let me see. And while you decide if you have a question for Ricky or Thomas or myself, Thomas, if you could go to the homepage of developers.docusign.com,
Okay.
where you were. And I just want to make sure we can see from the home page how to get to the iOS section. So is that under APIs, I believe?
Let's see, under APIs.
Okay, in that case, I believe, all right, so you go to eSignature REST API, because this is another SDK for the eSignature REST API. And then under SDKs and tools in the blue section. So right there, you see our native iOS SDK. So, and then if you click there, that gets to the page that we've been showing before, which is the home page for the iOS SDK itself. And then from here, there's the documentation and the link to GitHub for both downloading it and downloading the examples, lots of information. Thomas, was the demo that you showed, is that one of the demos that's available on GitHub?
Yes, that is actually one of the sample apps that we do provide through GitHub. So you can definitely go here on your own time and kind of explore that as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you very much, Ricky, for your time today. Thank you, all of our attendees. If we'll be sending out another poll right now, and if you could, again, take a minute to fill that in, just a couple of questions to help us plan other webinars in the future to best meet your needs, that would be very much appreciated. We have the resources slide here, and as I said, there's going to be another webinar coming up soon. And so look on your developers dashboard, really the front page of demo.docusign.com for information about the next webinar that we're going to have for you. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you again, Ricky and Thomas. And we're going to sign off, and we wish you a very good rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.